Okay, and now time for a little chat with Deuce McAllister. Deuce, the radio color analyst for the New Orleans Saints, obviously, Saints legend. And Deuce, what has the legend seen so far in training camp practices?
I think, pretty much what you expect, particularly when you talk about guys in pads. Knock on wood, the best thing is you hadn't had an abundance of injuries, and that's one of the things that you always worry about whenever you go into pads. And, it's just the physical piece of it. I think when you talk about just regular guys going out there and competing, you've seen a good bit of that. Normally when you start a camp, the defense is normally ahead of the offense, and I would say that's the case. I also would say that this is a pretty talented defense as well, and the biggest thing for this team, in my opinion, will be injuries. Can they survive the injury bugs, not only in camp but during the season? Because there's enough talent for this team to be able to qualify for the playoffs and make a run. Because anytime you get into the playoffs, anything can happen.
Defense being ahead of this offense, you just mentioned that, and certainly we've seen some of that. How much does that help confidence-wise to carry over to a season? Because we know when the Saints have been good, usually the defense, especially defensively, it started out early in camp, and it's just kind of carried over momentum-wise.
Well, I think it starts with a couple of key players. You talk about DeMario Davis, you talk about Cam Jordan. If those guys can really get going early, then that definitely helps them. On the back end, it's going to be, really Lattimore. I think that he is the catalyst. A couple years it has taken him a couple games to be able to be locked in. Right now it looks like he's locked in, and when he's locked in, it's hard for any receiver to be able to really get any yardage on him. And so it just helps them so much, because now from a defensive standpoint, they can do so many different things. I think with Janoris Jenkins, Jack Rabbit at the other corner, him being in the system for at least, you didn't have a true offseason, but he's been here long enough where, it wasn't like they picked him up last season in the middle of the year. He helps them to be able to say, hey, look, we can play press man coverage, and we can have the safety be able to roam free. We can bring an extra guy as far as a defender. We can put him in the box, or we can play cover two and just let cover two man and just let our corners be able to cover and let our defensive front be able to get after you. So Dennis has some different options. Dennis Allen has some different options of how he can call the defense, how he can attack offensive. So it should be a fun, season to be able to watch.
I tell you what, I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen offensively. You mentioned offense kind of started a little bit slow behind the defense, but a guy who looks like he's in peak physical condition, Alvin Kamara. Yeah. Alvin looks good. What are your impressions on him early in this camp?
Well, you see the happy, you see the smiling, you see the jubilant Alvin Kamara. You see him bouncing around, jumping around, and he's had a couple runs in camp, and it was one that you teach at a clinic. That's how nice it was, from a footwork, from a cut, from just speed and explosion. And so for him, it's can we keep him healthy? And I think that they have enough weapons offensively where he doesn't have to get the bulk of the touches. I know probably for me that sweet spot is going to be around 15. I think he's been around 18 to 20 for last year. So if we can limit his touches to a point where he can still be explosive, not only at the middle of the year but at the end of the year, that's when you have a special Alvin Kamara.
I think this team offensively, you have to start with the line, obviously. And we know who the starters are going to be, but what do you think about those backup positions? Because it seems like they're pretty well set in terms of depth, quality depth. They've got some guys, whether it be, Omame or whether it be Nick Easton, who have started games for the Saints, and yet they'll probably start on the bench, but these are guys who are capable of stepping in and playing.
Well, interior, I think they're fine. Interior offensive line, you've got probably 3 or 4 guys that may not even dress here, as far as just because you can only carry so many offensive linemen. They would be starters on other teams. You talked about Amway, you talked about Easton. I really like Will as either extra tight end. He can fill in for you. Cameron Tom can fill in either at center and or guard. So it's always interesting to see how that unfolds. You always want a swing tackle to be able to step in. Patrick Omame can be that guy. So it really just depends on, knock on wood, no major injuries for those guys, but you just have to wait and see.
I'm going to stay on offense for one last thing. We know that Emmanuel Sanders is in to help at receiver, but behind him, whether it be Traquan Smith or whether it be Deontay Harris or someone else. There's going to have to be somebody else who steps into that position and produces. What do you see happening behind Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders?
Well, that position is going to be one that they fight for to the end, and it still may be a little up and down as far as a yo-yo is concerned. I like Callaway. Benny Flower. He's been in the NFL for a while, so you kind of know what you get with him. So when you look at the overall as far as talented guys, the question will be who plays special teams. Who plays special teams? What can you give me special teams wise? Are you a gunner? Are you a guy that can come out and be a jammer? If we need an extra jammer as far as from the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see that position. Deontay Harris has pretty much established himself as far as your returner, but who can be a backup for him? Do we have a position for somebody maybe to step in and be a blocker in heavy jumbo sets? So different things of that nature will definitely come into play.
All right, that's Deuce McAllister. Always appreciated with his analysis. I'm John DeShazier, and we'll be back.